Breaking down the fallout after another tragic ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis that once again feels like it was completely avoidable. Democrats are careening towards a government shutdown that doesn't make any sense. We're also going to talk about some of the fallout from Davos. All of that and so much more today on a special at-home Frozen In 10-minute drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
Over the weekend, there was another tragic ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis. The videos of this shooting were very disturbing, and we're going to get a lot more information about what led to this, what led the agents to use the deadly force that they used. There's been a lot of reports about guns discharging, about confusion on the scene, and also, as you see and hear those videos, you hear honking, whistling, and a sound of pure chaos. But a number of Republican senators are calling for an investigation. Fox News' Bill Melugin also added this. A DHS spokesperson confirms to Fox News that several federal agents had their body cameras on during the interaction that led to the deadly shooting of Alex Pretti in Minnesota. Footage from multiple angles is being reviewed by investigators. So this will continue. There will be investigatory efforts made, and there will be some effort to find out what led to this, because the agent who actually pulled the trigger was not an inexperienced person. Reports suggest that he had several years in specifically use of force training and would not have done that unless he felt his life was in danger. But we need to hear more about what those circumstances are. Unfortunately, Democrats in Minnesota seized on this immediately to increase their rhetoric and continue to drive more fury in the state, which led to riots over the weekend and a number of other things that we're going to cover throughout this episode. But the unfortunate truth here is this type of incident would not happen if, one, there were not mobilized efforts to resist and obstruct ICE. Alex Pretti did not deserve to die, but he also was actively obstructing a law enforcement operation, which led to these tragic circumstances. But the other piece here is ICE would not be out in public carrying out these at-large arrests at all if not for the sanctuary policies of Minnesota and people like Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey barring his own police officers from working with ICE in just simply transferring people from jails, prison, incarceration to ICE. Instead, these ICE agents are working out in public, carrying out these dangerous arrests in these terrible circumstances. Many in the media, including Fox News' Bill Melugin, have been reporting on a bit of conflict within the Trump administration over how ICE should be operating, whether they should be focusing primarily on violent criminals, people with criminal records, or just trying to remove and apprehend as many illegal immigrants as possible. After a lot of discussion, including fallout from the weekend in the wake of the Alex Pretti shooting, President Trump announced that Border Patrol Chief Tom Homan would be heading up to Minnesota to oversee operations there. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tweeted, Tom Homan will be managing ICE operations on the ground in Minnesota to continue arresting the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens. In addition, Tom will coordinate with those leading investigations into the massive, widespread fraud that has resulted in billions of taxpayer dollars being stolen from law-abiding citizens in Minnesota. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few weeks of people looking for an off-ramp to this incredibly contentious situation. There were stories last week about Tim Walz wanting an off-ramp, and then after this shooting, it seemed like Tim Walz maybe saw it as an opportunity to really hunker down and build up support as he pushed back on ICE. President Trump announced that he held a call with Tim Walz yesterday morning that was actually quite productive. Here's what President Trump posted on Truth Social. Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on the similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him and what we were looking at any and all criminals they have in their possession. The governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. Now, this was a very smart political move from President Trump because he's painting Walz into a corner by saying, we're going to work together. He's thrilled with everything I'm doing. Walz would have to come out and say, I'm actually not thrilled with it. I don't want Tom Homan here, which makes him look like the one who's working against cooperation and an off-ramp and a way of sort of lowering the tension there. But one challenging dynamic is the fact that Tim Walz has said in numerous statements, we are cooperating with ICE. However, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey has said repeatedly that they would not.
In Minneapolis, we will not cooperate with ICE or any federal agency around immigration enforcement work. We will not.
And as Bill Melugin pointed out, Walz is trying to be a little bit cute there. Very misleading from Waltz. Yes, his prisons honor ICE detainers by transferring convicted criminal aliens after they serve their sentence, but his city and county jails do not. So again, what Malugion's pointing to there is the fact that ICE gets these criminals after they've been convicted and served their time. ICE would like to get those prisoners after they are arrested for a crime and not after they're, released on bail into the community, things like that. That makes things much more dangerous and much more complicated for ICE as they try and apprehend these criminals. Now, we've talked a lot here about the anti-ICE resistance that we've seen so far in Minnesota. We went over the training material for ICE Watch, a group that encourages people to get up and physically confront ICE agents. This is something that many have compared to not just protests, but things like a counterinsurgency. Now, Tim Waltz claims that they respect law and order. Minnesota believes in law and order. We believe in peace. And we believe that Trump needs to pull his 3,000 untrained agents out of Minnesota before they kill another American in the street. Now, you have to read that tweet for what it is, which is a threat. We believe in law and order, we believe in peace, and maybe it will come back if President Trump complies with our demand to change federal immigration policy. And President Trump can't do that. He can't pull back the efforts in Minnesota because what will happen after that is every blue state in the country will see a massive influx in this kind of well-funded resistance, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today. We've talked about the organization with ICE Watch, things like that, but what we're seeing is signs that this resistance, this counterinsurgency, is so much more well-funded and organized than anybody understood. First, let's go to what Matt Finn tweeted. So here's one for you. One of our rental car license plate numbers has been added to the anti-ICE databases in Minnesota, and our car has been deemed confirmed ICE. The activists take license plates down and enter them into databases. Another independent journalist had a very similar experience. Yesterday while driving, we were followed by multiple vehicles for over an hour. We were told that we came up in the local ICE Watch group's ICE database. You can hear us confirm to them multiple times that we are not ICE. At one point, they asked for our IDs to see who we were. Insane network they're running here, never seen anything like it. Now watch really closely the interaction that she has with some of these people.
Not in an ICE vehicle, right?
No.
Right.
Right, get in your truck and get the out. Why? Because you need to go. Confirmed ICE. Get the
Confirmed ICE through who? We're American citizens.
Nothing on me. Prove it.
We're not ICE.
I don't have no weapons.
Let me see your IDs of where you live.
What this feels like is sort of a cultish paramilitary operation where you've got your own sort of leadership built up there directing this as if it was, again, a counterinsurgency. And when you look at the technology that they're operating with, another thing that came from some of those independent journalists was finding out that there were signal chats where people were alerting to where ICE's position were, also operating like a dispatch system where they've got people as a part of ICE Watch following the ICE vehicles around just like these independent journalists experienced, reporting all of their positions. And anytime there's an operation about to be carried out, they swarm the scene, get in the way, honk their horns, blow their whistles, and carry out the ICE Watch guidance to interfere and de-arrest the illegal immigrants that they're going after, which is simply crazy. But it doesn't end there. Minutes after the shooting, boxes dropped off with free winter hats and designer face masks to conceal protesters' identities. So to have this scenario where a tragedy's happened and within minutes, riot gear is dropped off to help the rioters and protesters, this is crazy to watch and more than a little bit scary to consider what ICE is facing as they go into Minneapolis and try and simply arrest murderers, rapists, and violent criminals. And what we've heard from officials on the ground is that resistance that jumps in to blow whistles and block and de-arrest and shove ICE agents isn't just happening to innocent people. It's happening even when they're going after the worst of the worst kind of criminals. But it's not simply the tactics for rioting on the ground. Nikki Neely and Parents Defending Education found this. Activist groups are organizing Minneapolis high school students to walk out of class and protest ICE. Training materials show K-12 students receiving guidance on walkouts, business disruption, and confronting law enforcement. For example, on this slide, options for day of action, you see Target. They're targeting Target. The demand, stop collaborating with ICE. The tactic they're encouraging is in-person mass buy and return, online review, and insta-comment bombing. And what that mass buy and return, and you can see this video from Target here, what this buy and return means is people will fill up their carts with tons and tons of items, purchase them, and then immediately return them in hopes that it will take employees time restocking shelves and things like that. All they're hurting there really is the lowest level employees who are there to restock things. You're not actually hurting Target or making any kind of impact, but this is what the left is teaching high school students to do. In the last week, you might have read or seen stories, particularly on your Instagram feed, about how ICE targeted a 5-year-old boy for arrest. You've likely seen the images of this sad-looking boy with a very cute hat with the ears, and people saying, "I can't believe this. This is not us. This is not America." Well, it turns out you're right, because that's not really what happened in this story whatsoever. But unfortunately, the truth does not really matter here to the activists and to the media. What DHS reported minutes after this broke, unfortunately, a lie travels halfway around the world before the truth can get its shoes on. What really happened here is ICE went after a man who's in this country illegally who happened to have his son in the car with him. When ICE approached the car, the man abandoned his child and ran away. And so ICE isn't just going to leave the boy sitting out in the cold. They took him home to his mother, where neighbors, probably ICE Watch, probably all the crazy people blowing whistles and honking their horns, were screaming at her not to open the door so she could not be reunited with her own child. So ICE took the child, reunited it with the father, and they're now down in a detention facility in Texas. But you probably read headlines about how the boy was used for bait, or he was kidnapped by ICE, all sorts of crazy things. And it is shocking how irresponsible the media is with stories like this. But it's really important to understand there's always more to it. And if you see millions of Instagram posts about how outrageous this is, please get to the bottom of it first. Over the last few weeks, the House and Senate have been preparing to vote on a series of major government funding bills. Now, Democrat Senate leaders, after the last shutdown, have suggested there wouldn't be any kind of shutdown this time. But after the shooting in Minneapolis over the weekend, a number of Senate Democrats have said they can't support any additional funding for ICE.
Well, we can't vote to fund this lawless Department of Homeland Security.
The problem for Democrats is that ICE is already funded until 2029. And so anything that they try and do to cut DHS funding isn't actually going to impact ICE. It's going to impact FEMA at a time when we're facing a series of major winter storms and disaster declarations. Also things like TSA, where you don't really want to cut funding. So Democrats are in a tough spot here, but you don't have to take my word for it. Here's Rosa DeLauro, the human mosquito who oversees appropriations for Democrats in the House. The Homeland Security funding bill is more than just ICE. If we allow a lapse in funding, TSA agents will be forced to work without pay, FEMA assistance could be delayed, and the U.S. Coast Guard will be adversely affected, all while ICE continues functioning without any change in their operations due to the $75 billion from the One Big Beautiful Bill. So Democrats are once again in a position where the angry Democrat base is the tail that wagged the dog, and the leaders in Washington who you would expect to play the role of grown-ups and say, we can't actually accomplish what you want here, are actually just going along with it because they are afraid of their base. And Chuck Schumer's problem as a leader is he's so afraid of his base and his own shadow after all of the rumors of AOC primarying him and him being run out of town that he's willing to go along with any terrible strategy even if there's very low chances of any kind of success, which the problem for him ends up being when they get to the end of these fights and aren't able to actually show any success to their base on their priority of impacting ICE, they're just more angry with them. And it gets to the dynamic that we continue coming back to, that their own base is so mad at them. Here's Harry Enton.
There's basically been no improvement. Democrats hate their own congressional leaders. These numbers are awful, awful, awful.
For You Can't Make It Up segment today, we have one that's not actually as funny as most of the segments that we do. Tyler O'Neill at the Daily Signal has recounted a number of new findings about just what happened when a bunch of left-wing agitators raided a church in Minneapolis. Agitators blocked stairs so parents were unable to get to their children at Sunday school. One told a kid, "Do you know your parents are Nazis? They're going to burn in hell." We've already heard about several arrests after this raid on a church, with many people pointing to the fact that church worship is constitutionally protected, and your First Amendment right to protest does not extend to taking away someone else's constitutionally protected right to worship. So there have been arrests, there's an ongoing investigation and discussion into this, and we will see where that goes, but hopefully people will be held accountable so that this does not become our new normal. that is all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us for this at-home 10-minute drill. Hopefully we're able to get roads cleared, get people back in the office where we can record this better and give you a better production. But thank you and have a great day.